problem is more of like where there's not like an app that's like a super app in US, at least in the West, where it's like they can basically just maybe there could be a lifestyle app, but like in China it's like one app can do so many things for you, and I think
Yeah,
that's actually a generalized intent already, where you pay phone bill, you pay water bill, you buy train ticket within all Alipay. But in
yeah.
US, I feel like there is a lack of that super app.
Welcome back to another episode of Talking Intentionally. Today we're speaking with Danning from the Flashbots team. It's really cool to have a chance to speak with someone so in the weeds of the worlds of crypto and intents and solvers. So I really hope you enjoy this podcast. And as always, please let me know if you have any feedback or comments and concerns about, what we could be doing better or who you'd like to see on the podcast. Until next time, take care.
Hey, what's up, everyone? This is Ash from Axel here with another Talking Intentionally podcast episode. We got Danny with us this week. How's it going, Danny?
Hi everyone, thanks for inviting me to the podcast. It's good. I'm in SF. Usually the weather is great. It's a little bit sad today.
Yeah, New York is warming up quite a bit here. We're here in the Monad office. Super cool space, cool people, nice and sunny, blue skies for once. But yeah, no, really thanks for taking the time. Brief intro. I think anybody familiar with Intense or like who's been on Twitter and been following this stuff for a while has probably seen your account or seen some posts related to it. But Danning's at Flashbots doing all sorts of cool research, written papers with like all sorts of different people. We did an episode with Professor Pi last week who had also written an interesting paper about intents and solvers and oligopolies. So excited to dive into this one. We can just kick start with like a very basic question. What's your journey into crypto? Like what got you into all this stuff?
Yeah, I'm here for kind of a little bit already, quite some time, since 2018. But really, I think I got into crypto by random opportunity. I was doing a data project at a course about analyzing clustering transactions on Bitcoin, and got an internship in consensus and got a return offer as a new grad. And I was like happily taking the offer to stay in New York as well. So yeah, I started there by doing like just general like data analysis for Ethereum ecosystem. And in 2018, there was like barely any like application except CryptoKitty. I don't know if you guys remember. I was like breeding my kitties and like trying to analyze like interesting like data inside of it. And then along the journey, DeFi came up around 2020. Started to building some DeFi and DEX dashboards when I was still at Consensus. But I think like I was at a data project called Alethio. It was like an early project a lot of people heard about, like monitoring node stats for Ethereum network. But it was too early for any projects or DeFi company to pay for it as a service. So the project kind of like sadly shut down, but I moved to ZeroX, which was one of the earliest DEX company. They built first on-chain order book and then now become a DEX aggregator who is basically routing across different liquidity off-chain and settling on-chain. They have a flagship product called Matcha as well, which actually is intent, also enabled interface. So like after I was at Matcha doing like DEX data, one pain point for user is slippage. Like so whenever you trade on DEX, you somehow realize that the price you saw in the front end is not exactly what you're getting in the wallet. The quoted price usually is going to be better, or like the actual setup price is going to be worse than the quoted price. Then you realize when you dig deeper, it's MEV. You realize a lot of bots are actually extracting value from this, and I just got into this rabbit hole and joined Flashbots. So it's kind of like like a journey that kind of made sense.
Yeah, super cool. Definitely like going deeper and deeper, like more and more layers into it. It's like on the
Exactly.
flip side of that, like what's keeping you in crypto? Now, this is something that we could end on as well, but I feel like it's cool after hearing that. Like all sorts of stuff going on. AI is super cool. Lots of overlap between like all these groups. I feel at least for me, like my friends that are excited about a lot of this stuff are looking at everything. But take that however you want. Like what's keeping you in crypto or what's most exciting to you right now?
Yeah, I think crypto is as interesting as a topic for AI as well. AI definitely has hit the point where it has starting to see this mass adoption, a lot of new problem being defined in the space, and people are nerdy sniped. But for me, I think like because I basically joined crypto since the beginning of my career, and now it's like what 7, 8 years, and I feel like crypto really defined me as a person. Like before I started working, I feel like I barely think about the problem about like society and like ideology and like what's the right how to say like the solution for a system to incentivize people to do good, and what's some like rewarding mechanism, what's some slashing mechanism. And I think like crypto really is not only just a financial, how to say, revolution, it's more of like a societal. And I think like the people in the industry really pilled me to become a believer. I think like I'm just constantly fascinated by people's thoughts and like what they think about. Yeah, and I mean, of course, there is a portion of people who are here trying to make it, but I think like more importantly, a lot of all those people who are, for example, like leading the Ethereum Foundation efforts and are really solid people who cares about the real things. So I think
Yeah, hell yeah.
I'm still, and I think like crypto at some point will have a mass adoption point. It might take longer, but I'm still here.
Yeah, that's a really great answer. It's like most tech is kind of just like this improves stuff or like the way that society works. But crypto is very much like a philosophical, ideological like change in many ways. I think most people are fine with it, but you get very unique people as a result. So that's a super cool answer.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
okay, starting to dive into it, but still without going too deep. Like let's take this way. Like define an intent to a non-technical friend, like super quickly, like a regular person. Like what is an intent? And then after that, let's do like a degen or crypto native or how you would talk about it in like a paper. Let's say.
Yeah, I mean, I think my answer would be may not be satisfying, but like to a non-technical person, intent, I can say it's everything. Like it's basically from starting from, if you think about the process, it started from like an idea, and to maybe an action, and then there's the settlement of the action. You can kind of like borrowing the MEV supply chain diagram. I don't know if many people are familiar with that, into an intent supply chain diagram where, like, say you scroll on Instagram or TikTok, you are getting curated with intent by looking at the ads. And at some point, you can click on the ads. It's like a conversion, and then you're starting to basically like formalizing your intent by saying, "I want to buy this with what parameter and like what size," and then you settle. Maybe it's like a website with multiple like sources, and you actually like say Amazon, you
Mm,
are actually routing the intents, and then you settle, you submit your transaction. It's basically settling intent. So I think like that's basically a framework I'm seeing intent. Intent is everything, any action you do. To a degen, I would say intent really is basically represented, or how to say, expressed in a way that on chain like call data. So basically, I think
mm.
any intent interface is basically trying to formalize what you want to do on chain, what protocol you want to interact, and formalize your intent into call data, submit your transaction on chain.
Yeah, that is super good explanation. I'm trying to like, how do I describe? I think to my friends, yeah, similar
I'm
like
curious.
intents are everything. Like we're the half nerdy explanation that makes sense to me is like I'm in state A today. Like I'm in this office in New York doing whatever I am. I want to get to state B. Like whether that's like I need food in the next 5 minutes or like I need to join this meeting. Somehow I get from state A to state B. There could be a
Mhm.
competition or some sort of market or some like counterparty discovery mechanism to find somebody to go and like do that job for me. I'm willing to pay something or there's some cost associated with that. And they just kind of go and do it. It's like I'm in state A, I want to get to state B. I don't care who or what or how I'm getting between those states, as long as like XYZ outcome constraints are true about state B. Like certain things need to be true, but the rest can be a super competitive free for all.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
that's very interesting. Yeah, yes.
Cool. I think we can dive into it like a lot more now. So like I think on the topic of intents, like lots of fun stuff. Like that's like I got in crypto because I saw like Uniswap X across like Anoma, Essential,
Mhm.
like so many people, especially over the last like 2 years, have been exploring it. And like again on this theme of philosophy along with like actual tech, in mind it's like the outsourcing of everything with guarantees is like end game for markets. So I guess when we think about some papers that you've written, I highlighted a couple. There's like a recent one, the execution welfare across solver-based DEXs, which was super fun because that's like diving into data. Maybe you could give us like a super quick overview of highlights and takeaways from that, and then other core papers or researchy type things that you've looked at on the intent side over the years. I think that'd be good. Starting to dive a bit more into the weeds of things.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so the recent paper together with Yuki from Surreal Labs and Dex from Semantic Layer really is focusing on one type of intent, which is like Dex swap. And again, like when we talk about intents on chain today, I think there's multiple type. For example, like there is, as you mentioned, Anoma, which I mean, Anoma is more of like a defining infrastructure kind of layer. But like specifically intent expression across would be one example for like cross-chain intent. In general, basically bridging is an intent. cross-chain swap is another intent, but from what I looked at, for example, using the 1 inch cross-chain volume, I use some Dune data. A lot of the cross-chain swap really is just cross-chain bridging. Like I'm seeing USDC on
Mm.
Base to USDC on Binance, that kind of swap. But yeah, there's also like cross-chain, purely just bridging. There's like user ops, which is also another type of like major intent, which hasn't, I feel like, taken adoption yet, but could take adoption quickly after Pectra upgrade with like this EIP 7702 would be very interesting to see. But yeah, back to the paper. It's specifically discussing about DEX swap intent, and today the intent protocol for swap on DEX would be Uniswap X, CowSwap, 1 inch Fusion. There's a few other, for example, like Matcha also has this meta transaction using like permit two kind of thing, but they aren't really outsourcing the routing to a set of solvers yet. So
Mm.
they aren't like typically like the three as like a solver auction platform. But for these three, the idea is that like, hey, the DEX space has evolved so much, like starting from like order book on chain, which is not efficient, taking a lot of gas, become like AMM model where it can actually how to say unleash a lot of power of liquidity aggregation and like provision. And then there's like DEX aggregators say, hey, like if you're just a naive routing across two AMM pool, it's not gonna be good enough. I'm gonna routing across all the possibility and also routing across RFQ liquidity. So solver platform is like taking one step further than DEX aggregator, in my opinion, where it's saying, hey, we will aggregate all the liquidity on chain and off chain, but we are also introducing some competition. And
Yeah.
we will hoping basically it's gonna be as good and if not better for compared to DEX aggregator. And so the motivation of that paper was really like, okay, everybody keeps talking about their pricing is better, like from every DEX team, but is like, for example, CowSwap actually better than Uniswap X and actually better than 1 inch Fusion? So
Yeah.
we basically did a empirical study. And so we simulated all these settled transaction on chain at the top of that block, meaning also end of last block, just basically based on the ideal liquid distribution. And we compared across different trade sites. We saw that overall, yes, CowSwap, because it has more features like batch auction and like coincident ones, like matching a lot more limit orders. And also likely due to the higher diversity of their solver set, there's more competition and also there's like a lot more participants who are not just market maker. They do look like they perform better than Uniswap X and 1inch Fusion, especially on the larger trade sides. So the narrative is kind of true actually, because people always say, okay, CowSwap is good for a big trade and largest trade.
Yeah.
And data kind of proves that, yes. So that's basically the primary takeaway from that paper. Of course, there's a lot of limitations, and tied this thoughts to the other people that Professor Pai, Malesh, and Tarun wrote about the basically like saying, hey, when we analyze a solver based intent market, we realize that given the assumption that if a solver has to hold inventory to enter the market, that is a pretty high cost for anybody to enter. That actually raise the entry barrier and actually cause less people can compete in the competition. So um, that's why it costs. This word is so hard to pronounce for me. Oligopoly,
Yeah.
oligopoly.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But I think like sometimes people have a common misunderstanding for that paper because they while I think that the model is proven to be true, which I contributed some like empirical results as well, which showed that when a trade size is higher or bigger, when people are requesting for a bigger trade, there will be less solver responding to that quote, which
Mm.
is basically because like people have less inventory to actually respond to that size. While that's true, we have to acknowledge that today in a lot of those solver market, a lot of solver are not holding inventory. So like for example, like a large chunk of solvers on PowSwap, they're just the sourcing across AMM, which means that assumption doesn't really stand for them.
Yeah.
So
Very interesting. I'm nerding out. There's so many like cool takeaways here. Like so many. I guess just to like push back on some random like surface level thoughts because I haven't dived into this. Like a lot of these are permissioned. Like if I remember correctly, it's like CowSwap is like 30-ish fillers or like they have the great UI. I tweeted yesterday. It's like the coolest
yeah,
intent-based UI ever because I see like, oh, barter fulfilled my order versus like somebody else or like 15 out of 30
yeah,
solver submitted intents. But like to my understanding, it's still
yeah,
permissioned. And then like it's also like like huge competition is great in many areas, but it's also like users like what guarantees do users have? So I guess that a couple questions like
Yeah.
one like thoughts on like where we still have to go and where maybe some of these things like oligopolies or something else fall apart or change when you have permissionless markets or maybe RFQs that are on chain entirely, like who knows? And then part two is just like what guarantees do users get for any of these intense based dexes as opposed to like at AMM, it's the contract. Like I know what's going on. Like right, I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think like how to say like the point you made about permission is very interesting and yes, I think like as of today, all these platform they do need some kind of whitelisting. Like you kind of need to talk to the team to be able to submit transact batch. Although there's some nuances about how a solver can submit their transactions. I believe in the very beginning, CowSwap was kind of like taking control of the submission, same as Uniswap X where basically the solver will see a stream of transaction comes in from a user, they will respond a quote, and the project themselves will decide, like CowSwap will decide, okay, this solver win. And they will take over
Yeah.
the batch solution from the solver and submit it for them. Different from One Inch Fusion. One Inch Fusion actually just say, hey, these are the transactions, and like you can listen to it and like I believe there's still some API key, maybe not like purely permissionless, but the server are able to submit it on their own. But this design caused some kind of problem where the solver can just drop it and like would never respond again. And like oftentimes they can also submit like quite late and which is not
Mhm.
good for the user. Also, it's possible they go submit it with a much worse price and like the protocol has no control about it. And then actually a major difference enabled from this difference between how you solve a submit transaction is that when CowSwap is able to submit all the transactions for a user, they can decide how they auction off the order flow to next layer in the supply chain. So CowSwap actually has this auction called map blocker, where they then expose this user transactions to a set of searchers to background them and potentially get a refund, similar to the map share product that Flashbots designed. We kind of call it OFA products, but yeah, basically in this case, CowSwap was able to control all of the order flow from user and then make another layer of value extraction from there. It's good for user as long as they refund everything to users. I believe though recently they switched to allowing solvers to submit on their own. Yeah, so but back to the other point you were asking about, like where are we going with this all these like solver platform? What are the guarantee user really getting? It's a good question. I think like there's a lack of research actually about how much users order are getting filled. Like what's the fill rate? Because everything we see is on chain. It's just like only the settled portion. It's hard to get this data because not all these like protocol they stream all the on land data transaction constantly historically. The only luck we can try is like say ask for a solver if they've cached all the user transactions streamed in the past. For Uniswap X, for example, Tokalab actually has a pretty good research data set if anyone is interested. Um, but I think yeah, like user really is getting a guarantee of like a limit order. And so basically like they basically can know, okay, what's the price I set? I think not even like how long can it be how to say valid to be filled.
Yeah, that's very interesting. It's like in my head, like maybe a crude analogy, but like when I think about the across flow, like not as much the Dex, but it's like there's some event that is emitted from a contract when I have some fill request. If I go on their front end and I say I want to bridge like a million ETH, it like nothing's gonna happen, right? Like there's no counterparty that will go and fulfill this. If I do like a tiny amount, then it'll give me a wait time estimate, and that keeps going up, let's say, depending on how competitive it is. But like I have a guarantee that there's some event that is emitted on chain of like this is the bridge request that I have and I have a guarantee that like there's maybe a slow fill process, then it's like outside of solvers and intents as like a safeguard. So I guess do you see things like that? Like when I think like okay, maybe
Mhm.
permission, maybe API key, maybe off chain Dutch auction, like who knows? But like users know for sure that some there is on chain proof of their request, and there's some on chain proof if a solver claims it that they fulfilled it. No,
Uh, for Dex swap, not really.
very
If
interesting.
they're only if only they're requesting the front end, there is honestly no trace on chain. Yeah, but they're like in the case of, I think like we're talking about like slightly different layer of like action yet. Like I mean for swap, it's only in one chain and really is interaction. How to say the flow is like you go to front end, your request get how to say recorded, and then there will be like basically trying to match the intents off chain and then like find a solution for you and then they submit on chain. The your intent as a limit order isn't really submitted on chain.
Yeah.
So that's the thing, yeah.
Yeah. No, that's actually very, yeah, it is quite different, quite different. Interesting. Cool. All right, let me see what we got next. I think we could dive into a little bit more on Flashbots, like what you guys are doing, because it's like we've named so many different protocols, and like I think this is the fun part about crypto. It's like everything is very collaborative, and you get to like research and talk about all these things. But for you guys, I know Suave was like a huge thing like a little while ago. Like any updates or thoughts on that, and like internally, how do you guys think about this? And of course, so much overlap between Mev, Intense, and all this. But what's the internal like view on Intense, and what are y'all doing right now?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, to address Suave, I think like Flashbots is a research-focused company. You can say almost like half the company's contribution in the space is like research. And when our founder Phil Diane, he proposed about Suave framework in like 2022 DEF CON, it was it wasn't really set to be like there is a concrete product yet, but it's more of like, open up the problem space, also like say, hey, this, like Suave really is more like a mindset of say if we could have a fair platform to auction off all this kind of intent, it will be like an ideal future with privacy component featured. And that's why Flashbots has been like researching on like TE privacy as well heavily.
Mm,
But specifically on the intent part, we actually released the data product called like orderflow.art, which is like a purely open source website where we map out all the actions from the user entry point to the end as like how the supply chain look like. So you could see so many information there. For example, say which DEX platform has the most distribution power as a front end. You can also see like what are the liquidity sources on, for example, Ethereum layer one are the major liquidity provider. Is it like Wintermute market maker? Is it like SCP? Is like Uniswap V3 pool still? You could also see many components down the line in between where you can see, okay, this front end got this order flow routed to this like routing engine and this solver, and then the solver submitted to this OFA order flow auction asking for like more rebate, and then that order flow auction submitted to a private mempool or public mempool, and then the private mempool order flow got basically scooped by this block builder, etc. So you can kind of see like the landscape of all the players down the line, especially on the focus of like the DEX trading, how to say, sector. A lot of like interesting trends actually. So first of all, like maybe it's kind of old news, but like in 2023, 2024, it's definitely the year of like Telegram bots. And
yeah.
there were so many, so much trading volume, so much actually proposal revenue were paid from like Telegram bots. And they even become such a hot thing that a lot of the bot builders were chasing after them to get a deal with them because, Telegram bots can submit a user transaction for them, because they have their own private, have users private key. They can basically like decide, okay, I'm only gonna send my order flow to this like Titan builder or Beaver
Yeah.
builder, and that will be an extra 100 ETH sometimes for a block to bid for the builder. So that's one thing. Another thing is like we definitely see more and more how to say concentration in private mempool, which is like I believe right now if you could see pretty much over 30% of the transactions and actually like over 60% of the trading volume are only through private mempool. Like you will not see
Jeez.
them in public mempool. Yeah, yeah. It's just like because it's a good thing because I think it's because user and applications are all being more and more MEV aware, and they know that it's gonna be dumb just like sending your transaction in public mempool and getting sandwiched. And because also a lot of this infrastructure and services are getting more and more mature, there's so many people providing private RPC like Flashbots Protect, like Mev Blocker. So I think tied up to that point, zoom out a little bit is that we see the MEV value or overall just user value, how to say, leaked or exposed, generated from user intents interaction on chain are getting pushed back from all sent to proposer. Manish and Max, they had an analogy of saying like it's all proposer monopoly because
Mm,
as of today, all MEV value are paid more than 90% to proposers. And proposer barely do much in terms of like extracting or like routing for user. But now we're seeing that, for example, like BuilderNet, which is one major project under I think the Swath umbrella. Today, our team is working on is trying to change the market structure on block building, like L1's block auctions state. to push back the value from all paid out to proposer back to builder layer. And then the builder can decide, I may take a small cut on the fee, and then but the rest I'm gonna redistribute back to user and application. Application can decide how much pay back to user. We're seeing the value pushed back to user more and more, so that's good.
Yeah, that was like a great overview of these are supply chains, like all of them, like the intent side of things, like the meta, like everything's just a supply chain. On that note, like final question there, like the left curve take in my head, especially over these last few months, is like trying to build more general purpose intent-based markets and starting from scratch and like talking to solvers who are like, who are you? Where is your order flow? Like there has been this theme of
Yeah.
like well, these are just like supply side and demand side at a high level, apps and users, and then like solvers who maybe fulfill their order flow. Which one do like matters more at which stages? Like in my head, it's like demand side is all that matters. Like solvers won't talk to me or care about what I'm doing in any world, especially a more generalized world, unless there's order flow. You gave great examples of like block builders themselves are getting like marshaled around by Telegram trading bots that just have like total control over private key. Like like apps just own everything. It's like apps control and can bitch around everyone. So I guess what's your kind of take on like that supply side or demand side? What's more important when? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's a very good intuition you're pointing out. It's like the higher you're on the upstream, like of the supply chain, you have the control of like where you want to go, and that's why basically like the block builders want to go after like OFA to get their flow, and also wallets, and OFA wants to go after wallets, which is the first entry point. It was user, sometimes application. That's actually a good how to say thing to make a difference about, which is when once you are able to convert your protocol become intent protocol, which today I believe it just means meta transactions permit to,
Sure.
then you can skip the wallet there. Because usually if it's like a normal user checkout flow, then the wallet will have the distribution power and they will decide where to send their flow. But if
Yeah.
you're able to convert to meta, then your application will take control. But I would definitely agree, like the closer you're to user, the more power you have.
Yeah, that's really cool. I got a Zoom warning saying we got 10 minutes because Jacob's the guy who normally runs this, and I'm not used to the setup. But yeah, we could start to wrap up. I think final big topic, then we could do like a rapid fire thing, like generalized intents. And I know it's a very buzzwordy. Like now we're kind of getting into what people have spoken about for a while. Like I think Anoma kind of piloted this in my head, and I think Adrian's phrased things really well over the years. Like in my head, it is as general as like that first question that we both kind of answered. Like intents are just everything. Like, do you
Yeah.
view a path far beyond crypto trading, far beyond dexes, far beyond bridging? And I'll give you my take after, which I think is very biased. But like, do you view a world where like Web2 people think about intents, or maybe you don't think about intents, but like blockchains are core to like tasks that I'm doing every day. So like however you want to take that, thoughts on generalized intents and like a world far beyond DeFi and trading.
Yeah. I think like I mean it's everywhere, right? Like you go buy a coffee, you're also expressing your intents verbally, and then they will settle you. You go to like how to say trip.com or like wherever you buy flights, there's like so many components you can tweak around. Intents exist already, and I think it will be great one day if like crypto can replace the back end of like settling intents,
Yeah.
and maybe we can some role in like in terms of the formalizing the interface part. But I think Web2 already have a really good like formalizing and interfacing part. Although I do feel also like very interested or like bullish about some intent interface projects who are trying to build like say drag and drop like generalized intents, trying to cover not only DEX but also maybe some staking and yields and like the lending interaction first. And then I've heard of people building like Web3 ChatGPT LLM. So that will be another form of like intense inputs of just like
Yeah.
natural language and become on-chain action. So yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, it's super fun. One cheesy example that we've been thinking about a lot, like just as a demo to start doing this, like ignore ChatGPT and ignore like generalized intense UI, just very hard coded. Like if it's
Uh,
sunny in New York, I want an iced coffee in the next 5 minutes from like any bakery within 5 minutes
uh,
of me, according to Google Maps, and it has to have above 4.5 stars. If it's not sunny, then like
uh,
same conditions, but has to be like a hot chocolate, let's say. It's like to me, that's like a
that's
lot of different steps. I can't do
yeah,
it myself. I can manually do it. Today I'm relying
yeah.
on like a couple third parties that are doing it, or I have to do the research on my own. I would love to outsource this job, but I care about getting
Uh,
things super cheaply. I have a couple outcome constraints that need to be met. Why can't we, like in my head it's like just take a JSON. Like 7683 is relatively simple. Codify those constraints. The marketplace there is not like Wintermute. It's not like block builders. It's like very different
uh,
solvers, I guess. But the set of solvers could be like Uber Eats workers or folks that are in gig
yeah.
economy type apps, or like some kid who's scraping
Uh,
weather.com, and then maybe you have like a proof of the claim that he's made that, oh,
Mhm.
it's like sunny in New York. Okay, like ZKTLS or
Yeah,
like uber
yeah,
optimistic oracle. It's like you could start to add on the layers. But I
yeah,
love your point about like a back end almost. That is very intriguing.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I feel like it's like such a sensible example, and I feel like you can how to say define intents in so many ways, but that's not a problem. That's just like
Yeah.
multiple type of API you can pin into. But the problem is more of like where there's not like an app that's like a super app in US, at least in the West, where it's like they can basically just maybe yeah, maybe there could be a lifestyle app, but like in China. It's like one app can do so many things for you, and I think
Yeah.
that's actually a generalized intent already, where you pay phone bill, you pay water bill, you buy train ticket within all Alipay. But in
Yeah.
US, I feel like there is a lack of that super app. That's one thing. The other thing is like access to your financial accounts, which crypto can take a place, I think. So
Yeah, super clear.
looking forward.
We could talk at this part. We could talk about forever. It's like, will we have a super app? Will we have like many different sub apps? Will we have like swarms of agents and swarms of solvers that are competing for many different apps? But yeah, yeah. On that note, we can transition more towards like the rapid fire. I guess like first one, it doesn't. It's not even intense related. I feel like there's just I got like some fun ones that I've seen recently. Favorite websites or like UI things that you have seen in crypto. It's like I alluded to CalSwap earlier. It's like sick when I think about seeing intents, like seeing the solver, all that. But what have you seen recently that's cool? Could be anything.
But yeah, I mean, I gotta self-plug my data website, orderflow.art, but
Sick.
overall, I think like, I mean, I will name a few like data websites. I think like there is this thing called payload.de/data, which is like a
Uh,
real-time Bloomberg for like block auction where you can see all the block builders bids and see like what are the order flow composition in their block. Yeah, general like there's another one called intent.markets. I think Militia might have also mentioned it. It's really cool to see those data websites.
Yeah, no, in order flow dart is also super cool. It's like a Sankey diagram or like scale. I forgot
Yes,
the
yes,
term, the
exactly.
flows. Yeah, really
Yes,
intuitive.
thank you.
Okay, next question. Favorite solver. Favorite solver. You've looked at all this
Um,
data and seen all these things. Yeah.
yeah, it's a spicy one. I mean, I think I've been really nerd sniped by the white paper from Barter. Barter is one of the earliest and biggest solver on CowSwap, and they're like hoping to like redesign a whole like AMM with like yeah, it was a lot of like components and batch auction as well. And I was nerd sniped by that, and like they were basically proposing a future where everybody's money balance in their wallets can be a liquidity that's being like used. And it's
Ooh.
like somewhat kind of thing where it's like you just need to assign approval as an like intent, and you basically are providing liquidity. So I'm curious to see that adoption and see if they can execute on that. But
Yeah,
yeah.
it's like nerd type me right there. It reminds me of like you see a lot of these deepen products. There's one called Grass. I think that went viral and made a lot of money recently, where it's like excess bandwidth. Like I'm on the Zoom call right now. My browser is open doing nothing. That could be used for some related task, and I could get paid for that. Like yeah, it's like money sitting in my MetaMask should be put to work. It should not just be sitting idle. Solver could use it. I have some guarantees. That's extremely cool.
Mhm.
Next question, like a little bit specific. I was just going through your Twitter before this. You had a funny tweet of like when you joined Consensus in 2018 and like each price being the same level that it's out now at right now. But what are your thoughts on like Ethereum as a whole and how it's changed? Of course, so much has happened since then, but like price price is the same, right? It's like, what do you think the gap is? And of course, price is never everything, but yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I'm a jaded OG. Yeah, definitely. I think, I mean, Ethereum has gone so far, to be honest. Like, yes, people criticize are like, oh, it's wrong to set the L2-centric roadmap, and like we've spent too much time on it, like not paying back value to Ethereum as an asset. I think, like, I mean, in the beginning, like Vitalik and other people from Ethereum Foundation never was the person who was gonna be responsible for price. So I mean, the price is a little bit unfortunate, but I'm still very proud of like what Ethereum has achieved in terms of like all the infrastructure, all the understanding. Yes, Solana and Base are pretty on the hype because of meme coin energy, but what does that really stand? I think, yeah, meme coin is more of like a behavioral science, I feel like, rather than really any crypto thing that's created. So I'm bullish in Ethereum long term. Regardless of price. I mean, also Ethereum already have an ETF, and as the second highest important market cap major assets behind Bitcoin. So still bullish in the long term.
Yeah, 100%. Same here. Same here. Next one, not crypto at all. SF or New York. And it sounds like you were in New York at the start of your career at Consensus, and now you're in SF, waking up early for calls. Like, what's the, yeah, like SF or New York?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, this is a real tough one because I stayed in New York and I thought all the DeFi bros are in SF, so I moved to SF. But then at the same time, it was like past COVID and everybody moved to New York. And I just feel like I was like basically buying the dip kind of case, like buying the opposite direction as everybody again. I would say both have their charm. Like SF is more how to say for focused and creating things. Everyone's a founder and everyone wants to build something has impact. New York is more of like a consumer environment where it's so many things to see, but it's kind of distractive. But it's cool for me, right, SF is home, and New York is good for a fun weekend trip.
Oh yeah, I feel like it's the reverse for me right now. My brother's out in SF doing some model
Uh,
related thing, like fly out there, good weather. But yeah, yeah. Cool. Well, we could call it there. Zoom is warning me we have a minute left because I didn't upgrade to Pro. So this is a good place to end it.
no
Thanks
worries,
so much,
no
Danning.
worries.
Yeah, really good fun conversation. It was cool. I feel like we
Likewise.
dove into a lot of things in detail, but also just like a lot of high level themes. So yeah, really appreciate the time.
Yeah, super fun chat. Thanks for reminding me again. Good to
Sick.
meet you.
Cool. See you everyone.